For most of us, the only thing we must worry about when getting a driver's license is making sure we pass the written test and don't mess up too badly doing that K-turn on the driving test. But for illegal immigrants, the process is so much more complex and stressful. Getting a driver's license carries a lot of risks for undocumented immigrants. With the threat of being found out by ICE and deportation hearings hanging over their heads, many illegal immigrants wonder whether getting a license is worth it at all. I'm Andres Mejer, and I'm an immigration attorney as well as an immigrant myself. And in today's video, we'll be talking about how the Motor Vehicle Commission in New Jersey, or DMV for most others around the country, and driver's license work for illegal immigrants in the United States today. If you are an undocumented immigrant in the country or someone on their immigration journey, keep watching to find out whether you can get a driver's license as an undocumented immigrant, and in what states can you get these cards, how the MVC can work with ICE, and what state laws say about protecting your information. If you find the video helpful, please consider sharing it with others, subscribing to our channel, and check out the rest of our videos. Now let's get into it. Nowadays, you can't survive without driving. Whether you need to go to work, go grocery shopping, take your kids to the doctor, or everyday errands, you need to be able to drive a car to get from point A to point B. However, you can't drive a car if you don't have a valid driver's license. That's what the law says in every state in the country. It's basically a credit card sized document that proves you're allowed to legally operate motor vehicles like cars. A driver's license is also something used in place for identification, showing that you are who you say you are. So basically, driver's license is just proof that you are the authorized driver and that you are who you say you are, Andres Mejer or Andres Mejer or someone else. So how does one get a driver's license? In the US, the Motor Vehicle Commission, or MVC, or Department of Motor Vehicles, again, depending on the name that your state uses. For New Jersey, it's MVC, so I'm going to refer to it as the Motor Vehicle Commission, or MVC. So again, in New Jersey, or in every state, there's a department that is responsible for registering vehicles and issuing driver's license. It's a state-level agency, which means that every state's MVC is independent and has its own laws and procedures. So New York's MVC may have a different policy from California's and New Jersey's, and so on. You get the idea. But generally, the procedures for getting a driver's license for a US citizen or lawful permanent resident are generally the same in almost every state in the union. The documents you need include identification such as a passport, proof of residence to that specific state, social security number, or proof that you can't get one. You take all these documents to your local motor vehicle commission, fill out a form, pay the required fee, pass the written driving test, and then a practical driving test. Lastly, you're also going to have to take an eye exam to show that your vision is good enough for you to be able to drive. And with that, you're all set to get your driver's license. Now, I said earlier that US citizens or lawful permanent residents can get a driver's license because you need documents to prove your identity. So what about the immigrants who are in the country illegally? In other words, undocumented. The good news is that some states allow undocumented immigrants to get a driver's license, or sometimes they call it a driving privilege card. The 16 states that allow undocumented immigrants to get driver's license or driving privilege cards are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, as well as Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. These cards are generally not considered a valid form of identification and usually have some language on the card that say federal limits apply, or not valid for identification, or not valid for federal identification, or voting or public benefits purposes written on top of them. So of those 16, all those 16 allow undocumented immigrants to get a driver's license, but they make a distinction between a regular license and just a driving privileges card. And they have some language like the ones I explained on it. What this means is you can't use a driving privilege card to travel on an airplane. You can't enter a federal building. You can't enter a jail. You can't vote. And basically all you can do is really drive a car or buy insurance for that car. So how do you, as an undocumented immigrant, go about getting a driving privilege card if you live in a state that offers them? Well, the requirements differ from state to state. Some states allow you to get an actual driver's license, while others give you a driving privilege card, or they call it something different. After you submit the required documents to the Motor Vehicle Commission in that state, you pass the driving and written tests, you'll then be issued your card. And just like US citizens and permanent residents receiving their driver's license, your data is going to be stored by that Motor Vehicle Commission agency. This data becomes part of the MVC records and includes names, addresses, photographs, some cases fingerprints. So you can probably see why this might be worrisome for undocumented immigrants. They are afraid that their data will be shared with ICE and they will be detained or put through deportation proceedings. And yet, not having a driver's license or driving privilege card is also not an option. Undocumented immigrants in the country already have limited jobs to choose from. These are limited even more if they do not have a car or driver's license to drive that car legally. If they do not drive, they might not be able to find suitable work. On the other hand, if they drive without a license, they risk being caught by the police, having the card taken away, and worst case scenario, deported. I have represented lots and lots, but I mean hundreds, if not thousands, of immigrants in driving without a license or driving with a suspended license, specifically for that reason. There are some towns where the police are, the patrol cops already know what your car looks like. They remember that they pulled you over before. So if they see you driving in that car, guess what? You're gonna get pulled over again. However, if an undocumented immigrant lives in a state that doesn't have laws for allowing undocumented immigrants to get a driver's license, there's not much he or she can legally do about that. Now, maybe they qualify for legal status, and maybe they should invest some time and energy to figuring that out. But if they don't, they're out of luck. It shouldn't be this way. There are several benefits, many benefits, in fact, to allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for and receive driver's license or driving privilege cards. By giving these cards to undocumented immigrants, the government greatly increases road safety for pedestrians and other drivers. This will ensure that if an undocumented immigrant is on the road, they have taken and passed their driving test and therefore are capable of driving safely. Research has also shown that giving undocumented immigrants driver's licenses reduces the number of hit and run accidents, since undocumented drivers become less afraid of being found out when authorities get involved. Also, this practice lowers the insurance cost of drivers and increases the number of drivers who are insured. Interestingly, it even improved poverty rates. On top of that, like I said earlier, a driving privilege card allows non-US citizens to go about their daily activities, get an insurance policy for the car, find better work opportunities, take the children to school, and usually results in them paying more taxes. So, state laws that make it easier for undocumented immigrants to get driver's license or driving privilege cards benefit everyone and should be passed and implemented in all 50 states. It would be ideal if we had some kind of immigration reform and there wouldn't be any more undocumented immigrants, then we would need those changes. But since Congress seems unable to do the simplest of things, we got to work with what we got. So let's talk about how the Motor Vehicle Commission and ICE work with sharing information. So state laws also need to be reformed so that local motor vehicle commissions protect data for all drivers. There should be policies that limit the amount of information sharing with ICE. Generally, ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, can only request driver data from MVC if they suspect an undocumented immigrant has committed a serious crime. Mind you, this does not include immigration violations. If the Motor Vehicle Commission freely shares driver data with ICE, it puts undocumented immigrants at risk of being unfairly targeted by ICE, even if they haven't committed any other crime. The laws regarding whether the MVC can share information about drivers with authorities like ICE or the FBI change according to state. In some states, the rules are very strict, which means that ICE can't get driver data without a warrant or a legal document that proves why they need it. So let's review the different rules in the different states. First, there are only 16 states in the US that allow undocumented people to apply for and get a driver's license or a driver's privilege card. So the other 34 states, this is not an issue because they don't have the data to share. For those 16 states, only 4 of them need to require a court order or search warrant to share private information of drivers with authorities. So let's say an ICE official asks a motor vehicle commission employee to share details like an undocumented person's home address and driving record. The official may say it's needed for an investigation, but without a law that makes sure there is a court order, there's a high chance of abuse of that power. There may not even be an actual crime the undocumented is accused of, but based on suspicion, the private data is shared. Luckily, this is not the case for Washington, Virginia, New Jersey, and New Mexico, where the motor vehicle departments need to see documents signed by a judge before sharing any information at all. There are some efforts by other states as well to protect undocumented immigrants' information registered with the Motor Vehicle Commission in their state. California and Hawaii, for example, have laws that stop their motor vehicle departments from sharing driver data if it is only related to immigration matters. So if ICE is searching for an immigrant who is suspected of violating immigration law alone, they can't access MVC records in those states. For other states, such as Illinois and Nevada, have some measures for the protection of driver data, which keeps their immigration population optimistic. There are efforts in Rhode Island to pass some of the strictest laws regarding data sharing for undocumented drivers anywhere. Again, it's not the case for all the states that allow undocumented individuals to get driver's license. So, however, let's talk about some more of that. In Maryland and Oregon, there are no efforts to protect the information of undocumented drivers. They do not require a warrant or a court order from authorities to share driver data with ICE. Instead, they have complete, thorough access to MVC databases with a click away. ICE does not need to submit a request or proof. They can directly tap into the information that they want. Again, the unchecked power the authorities, especially ICE, gain from the lack of restriction leaves a lot of room for unfair treatment and practice within the immigration system. Undocumented residents of those states have to deal with the constant fear of ICE showing up at their door or locating them through facial recognition. What happens after, whether it's detainment or deportation, is not guaranteed to be just or fair. Similarly, Vermont and Delaware have not taken any measures to protect undocumented people who get driver's licenses. Instead, their motor vehicle department is full liberty to give information to ICE specifically for immigration enforcement. Think about this for a second. On one hand, allowing undocumented individuals to get a car, to register it, get insurance, lets them be responsible, safe members of the community. On the other hand, creating rules that specifically target them defeats the purpose of allowing them to get a driver's license to begin with. Undocumented immigrants have to see the risks involved, and they have to decide for themselves whether it makes any sense. Let's look a little more into the question of, can undocumented immigrants get driver's licenses? So the laws for who can get driver's licenses aren't the same throughout the US. However, out of the 50 states, only 16 of them give undocumented people a chance to get a driver's license. I'm not going to keep on making a difference between a driver's license and a driver's privilege card. For purposes of this conversation, let's assume they're all driver's licenses. Some have conditions and some don't. One thing that stays constant in the laws of each state when it comes to getting a driver's license is what proof of identification is required. That is the main difference between an official driver's license for legal residents of the US and an undocumented one. So these are cards that are issued only for driving purposes and can't be used to access federal buildings or get any public benefits. Now, there are a group of states that only has 2 requirements. 1, you're a resident of that state, and 2, you don't have a social security number. Social security numbers are not issued to individuals without work authorization in the US. So you could be undocumented. For example, you could have DACA. And with that, you get a work authorization, and with that, a social security number. California is the first state that has this law, and it restates that driver's license can't be used for federal identification. The District of Columbia has the same requirement and issues a driver's license that is valid for 8 years. The state of Washington has similar standards, but needs proof that the undocumented individual has lived in the state with proof of employment or that she's a student at a local college or a university. Next, Vermont issues what's called an operator privilege card that acts like a driver's card. Finally, Hawaii and Illinois are two states that consider people who can't prove their legal status in the country for a driver's card. All they need to show to the registration center is proof of residence and identification. Next, we have Colorado, Delaware, and Maryland that have additional standards for undocumented immigrants who apply for a driver's card. In those states, proving your residence is a must, and additionally, you need to prove your identity with a passport or consular identification. They also require you to be a taxpayer, which means you need to have an individual tax identification number called an ITIN or a social security number. If you are a dependent like a child, for example, let's say you're 15, 16 years old and you're going to request your temporary driver's license because you're only learning, so you need to show that you're who you're dependent on by providing your parents' tax returns, as an example. The state of Connecticut's laws is the same as those mentioned, except they require an affidavit stating you will legalize as soon as you become eligible. In Utah, an undocumented resident with an ITIN can get a driving privilege card for 1 year. In New Mexico, your legal status isn't even requested. You either provide your social or you provide an ITIN number to get driver's card. The last section of states and their laws about driver's data for undocumented individuals are the least particular. They are more focused on providing a document to people who have passed a driver's test so roads are safer for the community. The state of Nevada provides a driving card that's valid for 1 year and is provided regardless of the applicant's legal status. That is, it is not required in the application. All undocumented inhabitants of Nevada need to do is provide proof identification through birth certificate or passport and get a driving card once they pass the test. New Jersey laws also tries to remove any discrimination based on legal immigration status. There are two types of documents. One is the Real ID that is provided to legal residents of the state, and the other is standard driver's license that is available to all residents. For the moment, I do not yet have the Real ID because it's been really difficult to make an appointment, but I need to change that soon. Otherwise, I can't visit clients in jail or I can't get on an airplane without bringing my passport. So, two types of documents, the Real ID and the non-Real ID. The non-Real ID is like a driving privilege card that we were just talking about. The state of Oregon also carries strict rules that protect driver data in their law. The legal status of residents are not relevant to the driver's card application. You only need to submit a form of identification. Lastly, New York has a very strict law about accessing motor vehicle database. No entities like ICE or the FBI have access to motor vehicle commission records to determine legal status. To get a New York driver's license, you need proof of identity like a valid passport or a valid driver's license from your country of origin. If you are undocumented and don't have a social security number, you need to include an affidavit stating you don't have a social security number. That wraps up our video for today. If this video was of value to you, please consider liking and sharing with people who may find it helpful. Also, drop any immigration questions you have in the comments below, and we'll try our best to provide an answer to you. You can call us today if you want to discuss your case or you need help on your green card or immigration journey. We will let you know if and when we can help you. And don't forget, if we can't help you, we won't take your money. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay healthy and be safe.